Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is Vaishali Wagle, who is a global leader strategist and a peak performance coach to Fortune 500s, an Amazon bestseller author, a successful banking technologist who later transitioned to become a talent development leader. Now is a founder and CEO of Ziness, a people and business transformation coaching and resource firm that works with some of the world's most reputed organizations. Widely respected for her thought leadership and actionable, bite-sized personal and professional development content. Vaishali is passionate about empowering individuals to overcome their self-limits and confidently take charge of their peak career. Today, we're going to talk about human sustainability and what leaders need to learn and unlearn for a powerful career trajectory. Good morning, Vaishali. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Sunny. Great to be here.
Great. I'm extremely delighted and thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule and being a part of this episode. It's a very, very important topic that we are discussing today. And just to make sure our audience understands this well, human sustainability as a term is quite unconventional in the modern times. We talk about, the minute you say sustainability, we talk about environment sustainability and everything around it. Can you coin this term in a better way so that we understand what human sustainability stands for? And then we can go deep into this conversation.
Sure. It will be such a pleasure to speak. And I think you really said it beautifully that most people think environment when you think sustainability. But just the word sustainability is how can you meet the needs of the present without compromising the future, be it in any regard. And when it comes to humans, it's exactly that space that I'm very passionate about. Because a lot of our focus across organizations has been around human productivity. Is there a way to shift the dialogue? To say, hey, now is the time to say, can I do something for my employees so that they feel more satisfied at work, so that there is more relevance in the job that they're doing? And more importantly, so that I, as an organization, can do something where there is growth, there is career advancement, there is learning, and all of that leading to their well-being.
Right.
And that, in a sense, is human sustainability.
Fantastic. Leadership is often looked upon as success in terms of productivity. How do you define success in terms of human sustainability?
Oh, wow. I think success as a term, again, in the space that I am in, we don't necessarily always put a number or a numeric value to it. But just like any other parameters of success, we can look at it in multiple ways. One is, just think of it in the simplest form. If your employees are feeling happy at work, if they feel that their work is being appreciated, if they see a growth path, if they see that their careers are going really well to their liking, do you think they're going to be more productive or less productive?
More productive.
More productive. So you have one number anyway coming. When somebody feels more connected at work, and there are these three parameters through research, that if you have autonomy, connectedness, and creativity.
Autonomy, connectedness, and creativity. Tell me more about it.
Three things. And it's interesting to sort of just segue there a little bit to say, have you heard the term Monday blues?
No.
So Monday blues are typically when people say, I don't feel like going to work. It's your Sunday evening feeling that I'm not enjoying work. I don't feel like going. So the Monday blues set in. And that typically happens when any of these three things, autonomy, connectedness, or creativity, are missing at work.
Right.
So when organizations or leaders start to focus on success by using these parameters, again, Monday blues go away. But more importantly, people are excited to come to work. They will bring creativity. They will do more innovation at work. And that's another measure. So can you say that human sustainability brings productivity? Yes. Can you say human sustainability brings more innovation? Yes. And these are some classic parameters that any day organizations can use from a numeric standpoint. A non-number parameter, which is about the well-being of a person. If a person feels relevant at work, they will find better ways of giving back more, not just to their work, but to the community at large.
Right.
And I think that's another way of saying, are we as leaders successful in the space that we are in? Because if I feel good about myself, about what I'm doing, I will want to do better for others around me and my community. And that's another way of, I would say, a success measure for a leader.
So I like the way you are kind of intercepting the workplace happiness index in this mix. And it's important to have that in order to improvise and measure success from human sustainability standpoint. That's interesting. So I have a follow-on question on this. In today's fast-paced world, we observe that more and more leaders are feeling overwhelmed. Why do you think that's the case, and what can be done about it?
Yeah. You've picked a very nice term there, Sunny, because overwhelm is certainly that word that has become a very common feature of leaders reaching out to me at different points for their coaching needs. Now, think what overwhelm really is. It's sort of like an overload of something, right? It's so much that you can't bear it. That's typically what the word overwhelm. And across the career landscape, across the corporate landscape, I think three things that could cause overwhelm, and that is increasingly making that happen. One, you and I both know, and I'm sure the audience knows, the kind of technology changes that are happening, that curve is such an exponential change. Whereas the human change of adapting to that technological advancement is not as steep.
Right.
So if you were to sort of have a graphical view of this going very steep, exponential, like a swish of the Nike in some sense. And then your humans are moving at a slightly slower pace. So that catch up feels overwhelming in any ways, right? The second I would want to attribute to the kind of social avenues that we have at our exposure today. And while both good, what we are doing today is a great social avenue to reach out to more and more people.
Right.
But again, the consumption of a lot of social media is creating overwhelm. It's creating low focus for so many people. And somewhere we're finding that to be the second factor of the overwhelm that most people are experiencing. And the third very pertinent one is the boundaryless culture that we are in today. So if you were to just go back about, let's say, even 10 years or 15 years, right? If I had to study something or learn something, I would go to a nearest teacher.
True.
Today, I don't have to go to a nearest teacher. I can go to the best teacher in the world because the boundaryless environment allows me to access anybody and everybody in this world. But that also puts a pressure because you don't have to be a good employee today. You don't have to be a good leader only in your little setup. You need to be performing at a more global scale. I would say that a lot of these factors are creating that nature of overwhelm in people. But there are ways of handling it. And one of the ways is if organizations and leaders start to realize that there is coaching, there is mentoring. So seeking help, I would say, is a great sign of strong leadership.
So technology, social media, and global access, while they are good, they're also leading to people getting overwhelmed in their roles in their careers.
Yeah.
That's an interesting... and we'll talk more about how do we fix this, but I'll hold on to that question until the later on.
Because think of it this way, Sunny, anything in moderation is always good.
Right.
Anything in excess
is always a problem.
Like even if you're doing fitness, but anything in excess, if you're eating nutrition food, but even that in excess can create problems. So that's really the overwhelm.
Vaishali, that's very interesting. You being a global coach, you had the privilege of working with some of the finest leaders, and you, I'm sure, have helped them in their journey becoming even better. with that experience of yours, you would also have met leaders who would be in a 50 to 60 years age gap, and you would also have aspiring leaders in that late 30s or mid 40s. Do you think that the leaders who were at their peaks maybe 10 to 15 years ago, vis-a-vis the ones that you find in their mid careers today, who have better access to technology, who have better access to social media, and of course, this global phenomenon, do you think that today's leaders in today's time are feeling more overwhelmed than the ones that existed maybe 10 or 15 years ago?
Mm.
Do you see that change or difference?
Certainly. It is, it's again, lots of study and research has gone into this.
Right.
So I'm not the only one who is saying this, but it's again the same thing. This kind of overwhelm that existed 10 years ago was probably in moderation
Correct.
compared to today. It's as in a comparative analysis, we could say that. And I want to just segue a little bit to say not just the leaders, just think of our children.
Uh-huh.
15 years ago, a child in their teens or early 20s and a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 20-year-old child today.
Right.
The kind of, I think the word overwhelm again comes up, but the kind of exposure that they have, the kind of insecurities that they're going through is tremendous. So it is not just the leaders that I'm coaching. It's interesting because there are lots of leaders who reach out to me and say, could you coach my child who is going to start his or her careers now? And so, but it's a phenomena that is happening across age groups, and leaders certainly are in that mix, because I'll throw in the fourth parameter to add to this complexity of today's leader that, to your question, a 15-year-old leader probably did not have, which is we have 4 generations in the workplace today.
Absolutely.
We never had 4 generations in a workplace. While that is great, but it creates its own complexities, because the way you would work with somebody as a Gen X and somebody who's a millennial is very different. Their needs are different, their demands are different, their perspectives are different. So as a leader who's managing this entire gamut of humans across 4 generations, they will have to be that much more attuned and adaptable to work across these generations.
So leadership styles, leadership traits have to be constantly upgraded in current times. And we look at some great leaders across all industries, people who've been there, built successful businesses, built successful teams. In yesteryears, we always had this point of a leader had a style. And they lived by the style throughout their careers, and they were okay with that. But I think the fourth point that you mentioned, even if I keep aside the fact that we are in the most advanced age of human civilization right now, we've never had so much global access than we have today. We have everything at our fingertips virtually. But even if we keep all of those things aside, the fact that you have 4 generations at the workplace is actually, or could be, one of the major reasons where leaders are overwhelmed and compelled to evolve faster than they ever were. Is that a fair summarization of what you're trying to say?
I would say that certainly is one of the big parameters, like the other 3 that we spoke of, but it certainly is, because it's a classic case of day-to-day comparison. Imagine a team, a leader having a team,
Right.
And 4 generations in that team. So it's not one of those things where you say it's a monthly thing that I have to tackle and I will figure out a way when that comes. It's an everyday experience of working across these 4 generations. And so it certainly is, you use the word evolve, which is amazing that it is evolve. From a leadership style, I would say it's more adaptability.
Adaptability.
As a leader, if you can be adaptable, you've won the war against the overwhelm.
Interesting. In the current times, what are the common misconceptions about leadership growth that one must unlearn to be successful?
Unlearn is I like that word again because, Sunny, you will not believe the kind of patterns, behavioral patterns that all of us have within us, right? And what are patterns? These are typical, and I'm sort of, if you don't mind bringing a little bit of psychology here,
Sure.
but human behavior patterns are those that come because of repeated ways of doing things.
Mhm.
And a child may unlearn something quickly and quickly learn something new, which is why you know how children can progress so quickly through their growing up years. But as adults, our patterns become more patthar ki lakir. So to unlearn it is a matter of huge difficulty.
This is very interesting, right? I always thought that with increasing age, you always have a challenge of learning new things. So your appetite to learn decreases with increase in age. But what you're telling me is it's also true when it comes to unlearning things.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
And that because unlearning generally, you're not unlearning a technical skill necessarily. You're unlearning a more human skill. And to unlearn that, and you said something about learning. So learning also becomes slightly challenging for some individuals because change is difficult. I think to learn is to adapt to a change.
Right.
And if I've done something in a certain way for 20 years, because these are the kind of leaders I work with who've been through, who've risen through the ranks, who've done tremendous work, who've had lots of awards and accolades with them. And 20 years, 25 years, 30 years of a certain pattern that has made it happen for them. And now they find themselves at a stage where they are forced to learn new and to unlearn the ways that they had tried before. And so it becomes a classic way of how do I navigate this uncertainty? I would just say it's again, a mindset thing. And if one can find a way to change that particular attunement to what learning means and what unlearning means, there are ways to make even this journey quite fun.
Interesting. I think a lot of our audience by now would be thinking about, we're talking about all the problem statements. You identified where we are going wrong and why it's getting so overwhelming and so much difficult to be in a leadership shoes right now. And I think my next segment of questions would probably give them a resource that would answer some of the traits that they should follow to be successful in leadership in today's times. First of all, congratulations on your recent launch of your new book, Scaling Peaks, right? And I've been following it, and I believe it's an Amazon blockbuster now. So congratulations on the stellar performance of your new book.
Thank you.
Tell me more about it.
Thank you so much. Scaling Peaks was, I believe, a thought seeded many years ago. For it to take shape into a book
Right.
Was, I think, a matter of many forces that came together to make it happen. But just if you would be interested in the backstory for
Yes, of course.
why the book really came about. So you, as a coach, sometimes the kind of work that I do is so empowering to both the leader and to me, because I feel I learn a lot even in my coaching conversations with these senior leaders that I interact. And then again, there was a little bit of hey, if this could reach more people,
Right.
rather than just the limited people that I'm able to serve through my work, can it reach more people? Can it give somebody a good practical guide? There are lots of books on leadership.
Right.
There are lots of very theoretical books on leadership. Also, I've found that, and I'm an avid reader since childhood, so books, I think I have more books than clothes. So books are something that I find a lot of value in. It's like listening to somebody's story, getting to know that person as well. So I was wondering, can people learn through stories of real life leaders? Because we've learned through stories of some of the greatest of the great in the world, right? Heroes of the world. But can I learn through the story of Sunny, who's a hero, who's a real life leader? Can I learn through stories of the leaders that I have coached? And that's what seeded this thought of Scaling Peaks. And I come from a tech background, so simplifying things is a very core value for me. And my work in Scaling Peaks is about how can I give the readers a framework, I call it the Peak Framework, that they can use as a very practical guide, as a practical coach to scale their own peaks of career.
That was my next question, actually. I have read your book.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm still taking notes from it, how I can apply some of those things. And one important aspect, like you rightly highlighted right now, is the peak framework. For our audience's sake, can you break it down and explain a little bit more about it?
Oh, sure. So think of peak framework as, I like to call it like a triangle, right? And it's three sides of a triangle or a tripod. And apparently, did you know the Sunny triangle or a trio is the strongest geometric?
Yes.
And when you think of it this way, the sides of the triangle are the three core principles of what the peak framework is. And before I say what those three core principles are, think of principles as your guiding behaviors in a manner that it tells you, hey, could I be this?
Right.
Now, to be somebody, you need to do something, right? So that's the easiest hack into being someone. And these three principles are being remarkable, being memorable, and being promotable. So allowing yourself to be guided by these three principles is what the peak framework starts with.
Right.
Now, the obvious next question is, how can I be promotable? How can I be memorable? And how can I be remarkable? And for that, we've got the peak behaviors. And there are 9 behaviors, 3 each for each of these principles, that will guide you with very practical, actionable steps to start embracing these beings. So you be a certain person. And the idea of the whole book and the narrative in the book is, it's not so much about hitting a certain peak.
Right.
It's more about becoming somebody that naturally is able to scale more and more peaks and enjoying both the journey and the view from the top.
Your book also talks about small but powerful changes that if a leader adapts to can lead to significant changes. Right? Can you give me some examples, some real life case studies of how leaders have actually applied those changes and what positivity has that brought into their careers and the companies that they've led?
I will let you in on a secret. So all the stories in Scaling Peaks are inspired by real leaders.
Fantastic.
Right? So while I have to put it in the book that these are people that are fictional, but it is interesting because for me, those behaviors really got amplified as I was coaching these individuals. So every peak behavior that you see comes from a leader that I have coached who has inspired that particular behavior. When I shared the book with these individuals, I did write a line to them to say, you've inspired these behaviors. And you won't believe it, Sunny, my leaders replied back to me with the exact peak behavior that they could point out that has been inspired by their story. So they are able to relate to how they have achieved their own success. So all of the stories are in some sense real in a way that everybody can adapt to that. But for the sake of picking one, which I believe is something that every individual must want to try out, both from a great impact that it can create, but also from a slight shift in the perspective, is the behavior that I like to call as develop your village. And developing your village is in two senses. One, what is your village? It's your people.
Okay.
Right? And the other is, who do you want in your village? And most people find networking, if you've heard this term, that the whole term of networking to be very difficult. But you have to be able to create a network of your own, because this is that network that then propels you to greater heights. This is that network that becomes your support. This is the network that becomes your advisor, that becomes your sponsor, that becomes your coach, etc. And developing your village is really a shift in perspective, because it starts to put the onus back on you, that you need to build your village. And I like to say it in this manner, that it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a leader to raise a village. And so developing your village is really going about very meticulously saying, who are the people that I want in my village? How do I recruit them? And how do I nurture them? And when the right time comes, how will they support me? How will they make me scale the peak that I'm on? And that's one of those behaviors. Of course, I'm talking very metaphoric at this point.
No, I think I think this is making absolute sense. An important aspect, like if I want to simplify this, right? If I'm the president of a country, how do I cherry pick my citizens? Who gets in, who doesn't get in? And how do I then leverage those citizens to make sure it's prosperous for the entire community? I think that's a very strong message. And the responsibility as a leader to build, sustain, and nourish the community around, which obviously you coined in a beautiful way, a village. I think that's a very interesting aspect. And I am not sure if a lot of leaders today think in that direction. So it's a very beautiful narrative that you just gave.
True. Thank you. And you're right about the fact that a lot of leaders don't think in that direction, because most people think very transactional.
True.
In terms of, I would like to reach out to somebody because I want their support on this, or I will support somebody on this. But this is slightly going beyond the transactional nature of the here and now to a more, back to the word sustainability, to say, can I build a village? Can I have my people in it? And when you say my people, then you no longer sort of fight with your villagers. Then you no longer say, I don't want to maintain a relation, because yes, your people can get on your nerves. I'm not saying families, everybody is all happy. Yes, you will fight, but you will resolve the fight, right? You will not say, I'm going to distance myself from this family member. You don't say that. When it is your people, you take it upon yourself to make it happen, that things work, things flow well. And it's a mutual society of caring for one another.
As I've been listening to you for last 5 minutes, this whole concept of village, I at least had a few leaders in back of my mind. And if I'm able to see why they are so successful, so I'm talking about successful leaders whom I consider as role models out in the industry that I worked or intercepted with in my current or past lives. I think one important aspect that stands out in each of those people has been the fact that they really managed to build their village, and they take care of their citizens as their own, so that the sense of belongingness, the sense of community, and then everybody grows together. I think it's a beautiful narrative. I'm sure this is something that is practiced or not practiced in everyday life, especially in corporates out there, but it is probably not something that people look at it from this perspective. So thank you for simplifying and coining this beautiful concept. I'm sure a lot of our viewers will take this back, whether are they building their village? And I think an answer to how successful they are as a leader, one of the reasons is for people who build their communities, people who build successful teams, and people and leaders who carry their people together are usually the ones who do better than the ones that don't.
Absolutely. And I know you're saying you're thinking of all your role model leaders, etc. But I think you will also realize, even for your own success journey, there must have been a little village.
Absolutely.
You have your people that are backing you and making things happen for you, and you can trust them. And that's really what that little village is. So the size of the village may not matter. I think if our audience is wondering, how big should be my village? The book, of course, describes the typical villagers that you can have, and I've gone into very practical actions to build your village, to nurture your village, and so on. So there are 3 actions that I encourage people, so that the village starts to form. But the size of the village really doesn't matter. It's the intention that I want to build a village. I want to develop my village. And then that's the starting point. Like, go from there. Imagine when you even have like 5 or 10 people in your village, they then start to bring more people and your village just grows after that.
Interesting. So people, let's build our villages if you've not been there. Very interesting point. And I'm sure it's getting more and more interesting as we speak. In the current times, a lot of people find themselves at a crossroad in their careers.
Yeah.
What is that one key mindset shift that you would want to recommend at that juncture that can lead to significant positive impacts in their careers?
Think of a crossroad not as a stalling point, but as an opening of multiple opportunities. So literally, if you were going on one road and you find suddenly at a crossroad, you just don't have one road. Now you have multiple roads to go. So rather than saying, I'm stuck right now, hey, I have multiple opportunities.
Right.
And my only invitation would be, take any of those opportunities. In today's nature of the world, what matters more is that you're moving along and being adaptable. And if things are not working in that opportunity, more will open up very quickly. You can always come back and take another road. But just staying at that crossroad, wondering, should I go A, B, C, D? You're just going to stagnate. So don't be a rock stagnating at that point. Be like a flowing river that takes any of those opportunities. And you can take more than one opportunity sometimes, because nothing stops us from trying a couple of things. So it's not more of a gyan at this point, but it's a very simplistic way of saying that the mindset that we need is to say, I will try.
Right.
I will try this. If it works, great. If it doesn't, I have it in me to try one more time and to try one more time. And that's really what we all need. And that's the adaptability that I was speaking of earlier as a leadership style. Because we don't know what will work.
Right.
Right? There is no guarantee that if you do a pros and cons list of a certain opportunity or a certain path at the crossroad, that is going to be the exact road that you're going to be on. And with the things that are changing, you're never going to be on the same road for more than a few months.
Very, very interesting. You're bringing positivity to every challenge that I'm throwing at you. And I think that's going to be the interesting part of takeaways from this session. Let's move our focus from your book to the human side of leadership growth. We spoke about the need of constant evolution to make sure that the leadership qualities are relevant.
Yeah.
But with that, a lot of burnout and career fatigue is something that's human, and that would happen to most of us. How can we continue to sustain our career growth without compromising our personal well-being?
I think this is not a career growth versus well-being type of outlook that we should have. I think that's the first point, right? Because a lot of us sometimes in the pursuit of a career success ignore some other things. What is well-being? It's the ability to feel a certain way that makes you do well. I'm being a certain way that makes me do well. That's my well-being. Now, it can be multiple things. It can be your fitness. It can be your nutrition. It can be, exercise. But more importantly, it is also about the work that you do.
Right.
There is no point apparently one spends 80,000 hours at work in their lifetime. And there's no point spending 80,000 hours at a place where you're miserable and then trying to eat broccoli for lunch. So I would just say that well-being really starts with figuring out what you're doing. Is that your first source of well-being? So career success, why are you going after this career success? Even in the book, the first thing of the formula, there is a peak formula is the I, which is identifying your peak and saying, why is this my peak?
Introspect even before taking the journey.
Yes.
Interesting.
Because when that why is meaningful, then you really know how it matters to you. Then you know, because the journey to a peak can be difficult. So then you know that I'm okay to take on this journey because of these reasons. It matters to me because of the reason. And that's a very personal reason for every individual. But figuring out that reason is critical.
Mhm.
And so in that reason, then you have to supplement it with a lot of other stuff.
True.
We spoke of developing your village.
Right.
But the well-being aspect that you say is also a very critical part of that entire thing. It's upgrading yourself is one of those behaviors.
Right.
And my simple sort of ask, and I know I use the word simple quite a bit, there's something about that word, is to say, can you as a leader try both and? I want career success and well-being. And I want that in all aspects of my life, my work, my relationships, my personal hobbies, my personal goals, everything. Because the whole thing brings well-being.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you talking about work-life balance here?
I hate the term work-life balance. There is nothing like work-life balance. Work is a part of life. And so when you think success of any kind,
Right.
there is everything in it together in the sense that I can't only have well-being in my non-work. That's really what I'm trying to. Because most people do work in a certain way. They are like a person. They are a professional in the work side. And then they are a different individual on the non-work side. And a lot of times we speak of well-being in this side of the life.
Understood.
My ask is well-being is the entire thing. My work cannot take away my well-being. So do work that also brings well-being to you. That's the first shift you want to try and bring. Career success, goals, aspirations, all good, all should be there. It's human nature to have that, but not at the cost of well-being. Because you can't say this will take away my well-being and then I will supplement my well-being in this side of my life. That doesn't work. The entire thing is about well-being.
Let's try to visualize your leadership growth. So let's visualize a ladder, like a growth trajectory with everybody's trying to climb as fast as they can. Emotional intelligence. And I think you certainly mentioned about self-awareness. If I were to put that into your narratives, then do you think emotional intelligence and self-awareness play an important role? And if yes, how will they play a role in the overall leadership ladder that everybody's trying to climb?
Now, emotional intelligence is spoken of practically in every leadership book, every leadership talk, because clearly it is one of those key parameters that one needs apart from your IQ.
Right.
Your EQ becomes, and more so for leaders and senior leaders that we are addressing here. But what is emotional intelligence? Right? Emotional intelligence is not the absence of insecurities or the absence of fear or the absence of doubt and worry. That's not what it is. It is about being aware of what gives me those triggers. So that's really the first point of the self-awareness element of emotional intelligence. And then not just being aware, but being able to regulate yourself in a manner. So in one of my coaching programs, we talk of presence of the individual. So my presence. So if today something happens here in this conversation and you say something, Sunny, that really triggers me off and it puts me off, am I able to self-regulate in a manner that I am holding my emotional intelligence at the forefront of this conversation, to not let that derail the conversation, to not let that affect the relationship? That's what emotional intelligence is. So how are we able to, as leaders, hold our presence in a manner that our confidence, our collectedness, our composure is all intact, is what emotional intelligence is. And I think that's a basic necessity for every individual, pretty much on a day-to-day basis, because unless you're sitting on an island by yourself where you don't have to interact with people, you will always find yourself in the midst of individuals that will warrant that your emotional intelligence plays out
Right.
in its strongest form. And it is the awareness of knowing that, oh, this can put me off, and I need to be able to find a way to regulate myself so that I don't derail my
Correct.
interaction with this individual. I think it's really that.
Hmm.
So knowing your triggers is important. Knowing what can create the emotional upheaval for you is important. So that's on the self side, emotional. The other element of emotional intelligence is is then stepping out of the self, really. It's like not saying that the spotlight is always on me, but shining the spotlight on others to say, how are you doing?
Right.
Am I able to be empathetic towards you? Am I able to understand you as a leader? Am I able to understand even what you're not telling me? And I can only do that if the spotlight shifts towards you. So my, again, invitation to leaders is don't have the spotlight on yourself all the time. Move it to your team, move it to other people and say, can I now, apart from self-awareness and self-regulation, be able to have a community awareness and other people's awareness and manage that aspect well? And that's really the sign of a great leader.
Very interesting. Very interesting. When you look at any successful leader, and we take a lot of inspiration from success stories, right? Whether it's corporate life, whether it's somebody in sports, somebody in movies. When you look at success as a parameter, you take great inspiration. A lot of people aspire to be like those leaders. But when you lift the lid and you look one layer underneath, you often find that success has come at a cost of something. Yeah, it could be a sacrifice made here or there. It could be work-life balance in jeopardy. It could be a knock-on effect on somebody's health. It could be any of this and more. What do you think organizations can do differently in terms of creating environment where a success growth story of a leader feels more fulfilling and not exhausting?
That's a lovely question, Sari. I have two perspectives on this. One, I think it's a little natural to expect that let's say when you're scaling a peak, that can become your primary focus in life for a certain amount of time. And it's okay for it to become like that. And you may neglect a few other things, which is why I don't like work-life balance. Because if this peak is taking a priority right now in your life, you may ignore a certain, you may ignore hanging out with friends, maybe, right? And that's okay because these friends are part of your village and they know that you're doing this. So success, there is a cost to pay to some of these aspirations, to some of these peak goals that you're going after. Because if you try to do everything, nothing really happens well, right? So excellence, if you're going after excellence, there can be some things that you may have to let go of. And we've known of Olympics athletes who have again and again through their interviews said how their trainings have been and how they have had to give up on some things that probably a normal person of their age group really enjoys doing, right? So it is okay to have that, in my opinion. Long term, I think that's not okay. Because I again find a lot of leaders, when they reach their peak, rather than taking a pause and recollecting themselves and bringing all of these aspects back into their lives, things that they love, rather than that pause and celebration, they are then moving on to the next peak again.
It's always that
it's the next. So you're always in some sort of a rush. That's what causes exhaustion.
So you think it's important to pause?
Yes.
To enjoy the peak that you've achieved?
Always. Why else are you doing it? Why else would I want to scale a peak? Why else? So for me, I'll give you just this. So writing a book was a scaling peak moment for me. And I can say this without any. So I'm apologetic to people that I ignored during that time, because I couldn't be on social avenues or going for certain events and parties and relatives and so on, and I couldn't do that because the book needed attention. And writing a book, you've written a book, Sunny. You can tell that you write something today, and that the next day you wake up and you tear apart everything that you've written and you start all over. And for that kind of a peak goal, one may have to give up on certain things.
Right.
But now that the book is done, if I now don't pause, if I don't celebrate, if I don't bring back this relations that I probably had to sort of keep away, then what's the point of doing that? So the exhaustion should be avoided by saying one peak after another at quick succession. The way to do that would be just pause at that peak, enjoy the view from that peak, enjoy the beauty, see who else are coming into your village at that point, see what else are you learning, and see what can you do to make sure that that success, it's generally a personal success. I don't think we're trying to do success to, stand at the top of the peak and announce to the world. It's more some sort of a personal way of saying, yeah, you've achieved something for yourself. So
are you saying, obviously you're not saying slow down, but you're saying take a pause.
Yes.
Enjoy the success that you've currently achieved before you move on to your next peak.
Yes. That's the only way to avoid exhaustion.
Interesting. So far, through this beautiful conversation that we've had, Vaishali, I'm sure our audience as well as myself, we've gone through a journey of our own careers. I'm sure we've introspected ourselves. We, in a way, have silently understood where we could have gone wrong, what we could have done better. And I'm sure a lot of us have made notes of things that we're going to do next to ensure that we take the key takeaways from the things that you mentioned and improve ourselves in our workplace. But I would be more direct now because I like being progressive. I like being prospective about everything. So what next in terms of wherever we were? We did not listen to this podcast yet. So obviously we did not have a leadership coach like you by our side. So we would have made some mistakes in this journey. We would have not realized. And at the same time, we would have carried some strengths that would have led us to where we are as leaders without realizing it's one of the core strengths as per the framework that you just mentioned. But my straight question is, let's talk about 2025 and beyond. If I'm aspiring to be a great leader over the next 3 to 5 years, what are the skills and attributes that I must possess as a leader that is going to help me in this journey?
Okay. I would not go down necessarily the attribute, because that again becomes a very personal trait of an individual. It could be domain specific and so on. But let's bring it back to the first question that you had today, which is what's causing the kind of upheaval and the overwhelm that the leaders are facing today in some sense, right? So and the human sustainability element. So 2025 and the next 3 years, how is the outlook across the industry? My first ask of the leader would be to see, are you aware of what are some of the trends that are happening across your sector? It's interesting to know that there is something called as PESTLE. Have you heard the term? PESTLE?
No.
And I use it in one of my coaching programs. And it stands for knowing about the trends that are happening across political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental landscapes.
PESTLEs. Okay, now I get it.
That's what the acronym stand for. Whenever I have coached somebody on this, they have always said, oh, I come from a tech background. I was so focused on tech trends. I come from a legal background. I was focused on legal. I come from a S background. So everyone is very tuned into their own specific domains and backgrounds. But if you think PESTLE, it just widens your horizon. So my first ask of the leader to stay abreast of what's happening is to say, hey, what's happening across Pesto?
Interesting.
And to say, is there something in the trend that can become either an opportunity or a risk for me?
Interesting.
Right? That sets the first step of this. My second ask of the leader would be, do not shy away from saying, I want to take the help of somebody. It could be an advisor, it could be a mentor, it could be a coach. Because if you are traversing a certain journey, I know you can traverse it on your own.
Mhm.
That's not a problem. But if you have a Sherpa along with you, you will traverse it in the most optimal manner.
Right.
So if you value time, if you value efficiency, if you value taking the help of an expert, please do that. Because don't throw time away when that is the most precious resource at your disposal.
Interesting. And I'm sure you are that Sherpa for a lot of leaders out there. So again, for our audience sake, would you mind mentioning how do people reach out to you in case they're looking for a leadership coach and learn from your perspective?
Sure. Sherpa is like a new term for me now, but yeah, I'm happy to be your Sherpa. And as a leadership coach, you can find me on multiple social media platforms, of course, or through my website, which is zenesse.in, or on LinkedIn, Insta at Coach Vaishali Wagle.
So all of this will be mentioned in the description of this video. And we'll make sure that our people reach out to you, and hopefully through your coaching, they're able to accomplish and achieve a lot of things as leaders in their individual careers and trajectories. Follow-on question to what needs to be done next. We are at an age of technology advancements like never before, with AI and automation changing everything in our workplace forever. How do leaders really catch up and make sure that they have a future-proof career in this age of tech dynamics?
Yeah, I think it's back to the pestle, the T of it, which
It's
is you have to, if you just were to say what are the trends happening in technology, AI is going to be at the forefront of it. And it's no longer a question just for a leader in technology. It's a question now for leaders across any kind of domain to learn about it. Now, I'm not going to be advocating like go and enroll for a course in AI, but if it merits that, then yes, please do. But I think the first thing I would encourage our leaders to understand is the mindset that AI is not here to take away your job. There was an interesting report which came out a couple of days back, which said, what are the kinds of roles that are going to be taken away by AI in a percentage format? So some roles like the ones that are more very data intensive, analytical roles are very prone, like 70% of that role could go to AI. But then there are other aspects that it brings you. So the World Economic Forum study, if you're okay for me to quote that, is while there are going to be about 85% of roles that will change dramatically within this year.
85%?
Yeah. In the nature of their work, like what you were doing last year.
Okay.
Your role this year will have such a dramatic change. That's not to say that your job goes away. It's to say that you'll have to do it differently.
Right.
Because a lot of I think what AI does is very simple, right? You know that if something can be automated, if something can be cracked at scale, just give it to the AI agent. What that leaves you with is more human work.
Right.
So if that leader understands that their work is now going to be so beautiful that a lot of low value work is going to go to AI.
Yeah.
And they are going to be left with high value work. And how can they upgrade themselves to be ready for this high value work? They're going to be in for a beautiful surprise. But most leaders, I find, are worried that my job is going to go away to AI. But then those are the leaders that I want to encourage you. You were not only meant to do that low value work. You're meant to do
Something more
lot of
strategic.
a lot of wonderful stuff that you probably didn't have the time to do because you were engrossed in all of it.
True.
Now let AI do it for you, and you can do something brilliant with your potential.
So embrace AI and don't feel threatened by it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm sure, I mean, human history has seen this, at least in our lifetime. We've seen this happening with the age of internet.
Mm.
People initially thought it was threatening.
Yes.
Now everybody learned how to embrace it. And look where we stand. We can't live without it. It's a part of our everyday lives. Same happened when calculators were invented. People thought that human analytical mind would go away.
Yeah.
And how can we rely on a small piece of machine that is going to do mathematically accurate calculations and outcomes for us? But look where we are. So I think with that, a lot of mundane activities, a lot of non-strategic things can be passed on to the technology so that we have more time to do more strategic things.
Don't give away your creativity to AI.
Right.
Like, keep your creativity with you. Keep the high value work, strategy with you, purpose with you, designs with you, the human side of things, the human interactions with you. But the rest can very easily be given away to AI.
Excellent. Excellent. One final piece of advice before we conclude this. If you were to leave us with one piece of advice to any aspiring leaders, what would that be?
So, Sunny, I generally stay away from advice, but I would just speak out of my personal experience.
Right.
That in looking back, and you always find value and wisdom in looking back, really, is your biggest moments of growth can come from those moments of transition when you felt that things were not going well. And again, for me, a lot of my leaps in my personal journeys have always come from those moments of difficulties, pain, problems, which in hindsight, I feel they were a blessing that just made me come out of that shell that I was in and pushed me to newer ways of doing things. So I do understand that our leaders today are going to be facing lots of challenges. We all are. But hey, these are those moments of transition. And at moments of transition, it's a great opportunity to say, hey, just step back. Like we said, pause, just step back and say, what is it telling me? What can I do out of this? So see it as an opportunity.
See that as an opportunity. Fantastic. This has been an amazing session. And I think, I truly believe one of the finest that I've had in this show when it comes to understanding the nuances of leadership and embracing everything. So in your personal journey, I wish and pray that you continue to scale to higher peaks. But like you mentioned, while you do that, take a pause and enjoy your current peak as an Amazon bestseller. It has been a fantastic session. Thank you so much for spending time and coming to my show. And I'm sure a lot of our audience would have learned a lot of things about leadership from your perspective. And this entire term of human sustainability is something that we managed to bring mainstream through this conversation. Really appreciate this.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Sunny. And this has been my moment of pause and celebration.
Fantastic. So ladies and gentlemen, that was Coach Vaishali Wagle. You can follow her through her social media handles. Look at the description. If you want to purchase her new book, you can do so as well by finding the link in the description. And hey, if you're not subscribed or if you're not following us, please hit the bell icon right now and make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss on any such exciting episodes. Thank you so much. Until next time.